Hi, this is Thomas with Chap. Today I want to talk about prologues. Prologues or prefaces or before show talks, um, I think are important for theaters to do certain plays that way. I think if you have a Shakespeare company doing a Shakespeare play or any classical play, maybe doing Ibsen, you should have a prologue to explain the history of what people are about to see. The politics of Coriolanus, the politics of Julius Caesar, what's happening in Ibsen's plays, how it pertains to that country at that time. Now, there's a lot of people thinking this is just for students, but I think it can help any theater. It could be for anyone who wants to learn. I did a play, I directed Bell, Book, and Candle, which is a play from the 1950s and a movie from 1961. And it's 2024. It's years and years later. And the reason I did it is because I wanted to do a witch play. And there's not many witch plays out there that have happy endings or aren't full of torture. But the stakes at the time for the witches had to do with McCarthyism and being witches in Greenwich Village. And if they got caught, what would happen to them? Now, that's not really said in the play very much, it's inferred. And now, frankly, after Harry Potter and a lot of other witch stories, practical magic, it doesn't seem like those stakes are very high anymore. Um, so that play might use a prologue to say, at the time, this meant this meant the end. This meant they could get caught and blacklisted or taken to, place that was going to experiment on them to see what was happening with their magic and how someone could take their genes and splice them and make an anti-aging thing. That's the stakes. Now, maybe that play has had its day. Maybe those things aren't as important. In the end, Bell, Book, and Candle is a little bit about witchcraft and a lot more about a romance. What if, YouTube is international, so hopefully this channel is going global. What if you're in a country like Spain or Argentina or Chile or Norway and you want a slice of Americana? You want to do a musical. Now, mostly you're doing it because your area speaks a lot of English. So you're choosing a musical that has good costumes, interesting story, beautiful music. So you choose The Music Man. Now, in the United States, The Music Man is done way too frequently, if you ask me. But we all sort of understand what's going on in The Music Man, whereas other countries don't. A prologue explains this musical is set in 1912 in Iowa, which at the time, well, even now, is in the middle of the country. And Iowa in 1912, in this mythical River City, which doesn't actually exist, is very remote. So when they sing about the Wells Fargo wagon coming to town, it's a really big deal. There was no Amazon, there were no deliveries, the car wasn't plentiful, certain things weren't invented, that kind of thing. Maybe this part of town is a place where when they get the phone, it only is one phone at the post office. These are the things you can include in your prologue or preface. I think calling things prologues would be better because it's more classical, and I'm encouraging theaters to do prologues and epilogues, which would be a talk after the show. Prologue, a talk before the show, for anyone, not just for students. If you're in the United States, we did a show about India. It was a Sanskrit drama that was translated. It was very ancient. No one knows how long, maybe 4,000 years. And it was translated to English. And as we did it, I was backstage, so I was very attached to the show, but we did it 130 times. That's how many performances. And the more we did it, I was doing backstage tours at the time at that company, the more people asked what was going on, which we thought was obvious. But the more I got into it, I started to ask specific questions. And the people in the United States, although they understood the story, they didn't quite understand the nuances of the story, which were important to the plot. They didn't understand the caste system of India and how the different ways these people spoke, which to an American ear were subtle, denoted their caste system and how they couldn't break that caste system, and what an untouchable is in India. That's a big deal. It's not like being poor in the United States. It's very different. So the people who had prologues before the show, again, mostly students, understood it a lot more and they got a lot more out of the play. Again, do people in Norway or Spain or Argentina understand the verbal nuances in the Music Man and how people are speaking or how they're singing? If you notice in the movie, Shirley Jones has a much more elevated style of singing, a little closer to operatic. She's obviously Marion the librarian. She has more education and she's the oddball of town. Do they understand that Harold Hill is a con man? And this was a problem in middle America at that time, and how this show works? Or are they just presenting to them another show where most everyone walks away thinking, oh, they're a bunch of dumb Americans and they should have seen through that con man? It was obvious because the show is structured to be obvious to the audience. But again, those verbal nuances in the way their speech patterns work may not be evident to people in other countries. So a prologue would talk about these things and people would enjoy them more. And again, the same message as I always have is it to get more people to watch your shows and to come back to all your shows, because your theater is presenting things, presenting art, presenting storytelling in a more communicative manner so that everyone can enjoy it. This is important. We need to get more people into theaters after the pandemic. There's been a real drop globally in people going to theater. I believe in every country. I could be wrong about that, but statistics I'm reading don't seem to lie. So hopefully you're in a place where theater is thriving, and that would be great. But maybe you're a small theater or a college theater or a very small high school theater or a theater having a hard time of any size. These things can really help your theater. We should learn from other people's mistakes and from their victories globally. What works for other companies, what works for opera, which works for ballet, might work for your theater. It's worth thinking about. And you don't have to do it in an expensive manner. Do it in a corner of the lobby, half an hour before the show, or perhaps an hour before the show, and you can talk for half an hour to answer questions. Most prologues I've seen are about 20 minutes. They really engage people. They're sometimes amusing when it's a dark show. I'm not sure how you can make Macbeth amusing, but there must be a way to engage people. I know whenever I talk about Hamlet, I talk about my frustration with my wanting to put together a show where there's a female Hamlet. And I'd call her Pamlet. And it's much more of a telenovela because Hamlet has a lot of the same qualities as a telenovela. If you don't know, telenovelas are huge globally. They may not be in your country, but in most of the Americas, in the Latin countries, the Spanish countries, they are huge, huge, huge. You think it's just a fancy soap opera, but a lot of the same qualities are happening. Hamlet's father is a twin. There's an evil twin who kills his brother, the king, and then he marries the king's wife. And then Hamlet has a problem with that. And then Hamlet's going crazy, little by little by little, and you can see the way he goes. It's very similar. So any of your prologues can be entertaining or engaging. You can't just do nothing but shock. Maybe if you're doing Julius Caesar, you can't be that amusing, but who knows? They should be engaging, and you should choose your best conversationalists to perform these talks. Whether you charge for them, I don't know. If you're doing a prologue for 20 minutes, I say no. It's just a service you provide for your patrons. If you're doing a prologue that's for students, from the college, for the high school, from university, that's an hour long, I probably would charge for that. You'd be surprised how much people think there is quality, even if you charge them £5, $10, whatever you think. You'd be surprised. That's for your theater to decide. Maybe that money is Minimal, it's £3. But all that money goes to pay your instructor, which would be nice. Um, how often should you do them? A few times a week. If you have a 6-week run, I would say about 12 to 15 prologues. Perfect. Probably not every show. They should be a destination. If you're doing things on a Thursday night, maybe you're lucky just to get a crowd. Maybe your prologue would bring in more people for that crowd. Who knows? It's for your own theater. What I would not do is have them on a Sunday morning, because there are, especially in the United States, there are too many church-going people that you also want to get to come to your Sunday matinee. So they may have a problem with that. Who knows? You have to learn about your audience. Okay, next time we'll talk about epilogues and backstage tours and a bunch of other stuff. And I hope that you like and subscribe and you come back to see what's next. All right, thanks.